Do you ever get stuck in your research? Well, let's talk about building a profile. It's a simple task, but an essential part of developing our research skills, and it will help us learn to prepare a better research plan. Hi, it's Mark Lowe with Kentucky Tennessee Research. Join me as we build a profile. What is a profile? Well, it's an essential part, again, of our research skills and research process. But we often discount the importance of taking these simple steps of doing a profile on a family or an individual. But this process will not only help us understand more about the individuals and the focus of our research, but it'll help us sharpen our research plan so that we can get into more information and answer more questions. By the way, be sure to click on the subscribe button so that you can be a part of every new thing that we learn and share. And be sure and take some time to ask a question or share about something where you've got stuck in your research below. So now let's learn more about profile. Again, let's do the simple process of building our profile from the 1930 census. Rather pick out something so you can see the basic aspect than to try to make it difficult. A profile can be a fairly simple process in the idea of doing this. But let's look at what we're examining within that record. So let's build a profile from the record. And we're going to be looking for a specific record, one that we may know a lot about the family, because again, it's the 1930 census. So we're looking for a Getty Lowe. Now, Getty Lowe was my great uncle. So I knew the family, and so let's find them in the Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's Warren County, Kentucky census for 1930. And there's the family. And the next step in the building of a profile seems again very simple. But let's locate a 1930 blank census form. So I've included the link here and down below to where you can get the blank census forms from Ancestry.com. And this might be a simple process, and you might say, well, I've got a copy. I can actually print the census. There's something in the process you're going to learn of transcribing this information from the census to the blank form that helps us kind of write it in our mind. And we see things that we wouldn't see just by copying the data by itself. So take the extra step to do this. We also want to take some time to examine the record itself. Even though we look at a census record all the time, notice that there are columns for occupation and military service. And these are essential that we're going to transcribe this information from the enumerated census onto our blank form. And you're going to see how this process is part of building that profile to make us understand more of what we need to do next. Then we're going to carefully add the data from the census copy to the enumeration blank form, line by line, each piece of information. Now, sometimes some of the easiest mistakes are made because we kind of rush in the process. It's a good example for us to just slow down just a little bit as we're building this profile from the record. This particular form has a place on the second row of names where you can identify all the information on this wide row, that we can get all the information from each individual on the record. Now, I begin to notice as I first begin to copy the occupational information that Getty Lowe was a policeman for the city. And I make note of that as I copy it in the record and continue on in the process. And this is what we're talking about. As we look at this piece of information on this one record, we're building a profile for each individual, not only Getty, but his wife Ruth, for his two sons, for his mother, his brother, and his sister-in-law, who are all included in this particular schedule. But I'll note in the fact as I'm building this profile about Geddy Lowe, of looking for the next step of research in regard to his information. So, for example, he's born in 1899 in Kentucky. He was married about 1811. Married in 1911. He was a policeman. There was no record of military service. Now, if he was born in 1899, this is the 1930 census, he was too young to have served in World War I. So I wouldn't have found that record for him there. And, of course, we have not entered World War II. But at this point, he's a police officer. It also noted that he owned his home at 628 State Street. So obviously, I could go off in many of these directions finding additional information, but there's actually a newspaper clipping that I found of Geddy Lowe as a police officer celebrating his anniversary. And one of the interesting things, him being a great uncle in the town where my parents actually grew up, as I would go back and visit Warren County, and people would walk up to me and say, "You're kin to Geddy Lowe." So we do have that Lowe face, as we can say, and that was one of the interesting things about him. So even today, folks will say, "Oh yeah, I knew Geddy," and often they would tell me the story of how they interacted with him as a police officer. Okay, just though we've started the profile, look at the information that we've collected just in regard to these families. There's Geddy. He's a policeman for the city. His wife, Ruth, is a cashier at a theater. And Wilkins, his oldest son, is an usher at a theater. Now, that's probably the same theater, but look, from the point of looking at what I could do for additional research plans, I could easily go to the city directory and probably determine where the theater was that they both worked and focus upon that information. In fact, I will tell you, having done that, there are newspaper clippings about her working at the theater in Bowling Green and about her two sons later who served in the military. So again, I can follow that information. And of course, look, there's Geddy's mother who's living with him at the time period, Ida Lowe, who is my great-grandmother. But notice the very next entry, which is his brother Ben, also a policeman in the city. So again, that leads us to additional information that we can focus on each of the family members and build a larger picture as we're collecting each piece of information. Now, the next one is Ruth's sister, Pearl Dowdy, and she's a sales lady at the 10-cent store. Again, if we're focusing on Pearl, we could actually go and do a research plan focused on what the store was, where it was, and even more about her and her siblings and more about the family. The point is, as we continue to look for information, we're going to build it by building a simple profile and building a plan based on the information that we find in regard to this family. Now that sounded like a very simple process, but look, in the few minutes that it took for us to transcribe that information from the census schedule to the blank form, we begin to focus on pieces of information about our research focus. That's the advantage of building a profile, of slowing down, of thinking about what can we find out about this family and those that interrelate and relate to them, and how can we build upon the information that we know to learn more about the information that we want to know. Hey, that's what research is all about. Thank you for joining me today in the Kentucky-Tennessee Research Associates. And in fact, stay tuned, learn more from us, and help us to learn more as we research together. Thanks and have a great day.